Hey folks, welcome back for another build video. This time around, we are focused on blowing things up with the hardwired gear set. So let's get right into this one. First thing off the top, the hardwired gear set sports the feedback loop talent. Whenever you use or cancel a skill, your other skill's cooldown is automatically reduced by 30 seconds while increasing total skill damage and skill repair by 10% for 20 seconds. And feedback loop can occur once every 20 seconds. So that is the guiding principle here. Because of the feedback loop talent, you can use an interaction with one of your skills to reset the cooldown of the other. And as you can see down there, we've gone with the Restorer Hive and the Cluster Seeker Mines. So we're going to be using the Restorer Hive to reset the cooldown of the Cluster Seeker Mines, which will allow us to throw those things out there nearly continuously. As you'll see later in the video, once you're in combat, you get into a really nice flow of just being able to aim, target your enemies, throw your Cluster Seeker Mines, drop your Restorer Hive to reset the Cluster Seeker Mines, and then restart that process all over again. So for our specialization, we've gone with the Demolitionist here, and that is primarily for the Explosive Ordnance talent, which increases our explosive damage by 10%. For a primary weapon, we've gone with the Harmony Rifle, which sports the Perfectly In Sync talent. Hitting an enemy grants plus 20% skill damage for 5 seconds, and then using a non-shield skill or damaging an enemy with a skill grants 20% weapon damage for 5 seconds. And these damage increases are doubled while both buffs are active at the same time. So while the Capacitor Assault Rifle has an overall higher skill damage ceiling, I really do like the In Sync and Perfectly In Sync talents for their ability to immediately give you 20 or even 40% extra skill damage, which pairs really nicely with the Cluster Seeker Mines, where you're constantly going to be damaging enemies with your skills, and then you can fire at them with your weapon, giving you an additional 40% skill damage and weapon damage while both buffs are active. And as a quick note, because the Harmony Rifle is a Dark Zone exclusive item, it is harder to come by. So if you don't have the Harmony Rifle and you want to look to put together this build, I want to suggest both the Test Subject Assault Rifle, which also sports the Perfectly In Sync talent, or if you don't have either of those weapons, you can go with a different rifle and just roll In Sync onto it. Just know that you're going to get 10% less skill damage overall when both buffs are active. So I would recommend hunting for a Perfectly In Sync weapon if you can get one, either the Test Subject Assault Rifle or the Harmony Rifle if you can get your hands on it. For a secondary weapon, we've gone with the Mop named Shotgun, which sports the secondary attribute of 10% armor on kill. For one thing, having a shotgun here is a great close quarters weapon for any rushers that get by all the explosive damage that you're going to be dealing out. But additionally, I wanted to draw attention to that plus 10% armor on kill secondary attribute, because as long as you have the weapon equipped, any kills that you get, including those with your Cluster Seeker Mines, are going to give you that 10% armor on kill. So the Mop is a great secondary weapon to switch to if you're feeling low on armor and you don't want to wait for your Restorer Hive to heal you. You can swap to the Mop, obviously lose some skill damage from In Sync, but then you get that armor on kill when your Cluster Seeker Mines get those kills for you. And then for our Sidearm, we've gone with the Card 45 with the Future Perfect talent. Because this is a 6-tier skill build, the Future Perfect talent will grant overcharge for 15 seconds when you get a weapon kill with your sidearm. Now the overcharge cooldown for that is 90 seconds, but 15 seconds of overcharge is enough to get 2 cycles of Seeker Mines out, and at overcharge these things are incredibly powerful. So I wanted to include the Future Perfect talent on your sidearm to give you another way to grant yourself overcharge and buff your Seeker Mines even more than they already are. For our mask, we have our first piece of hardwired gear, which is the first of 4 pieces to get us to that 4-piece bonus of our feedback loop talent. For our attributes, we have a skill tier core, skill damage rerolled in our attribute slot, and then we have skill haste in our mod slot. Keep in mind, because this is a gear set, you're going to lose one of your secondary attribute slots. But honestly, that's okay because you still have one attribute slot to reroll to skill damage, which is part of why I like this build so much, is because it's so easy to put together. All you need is 4 pieces of hardwired gear, and no matter what they roll with, you can always recalibrate that attribute to skill damage, because obviously that skill tier core is inherently maxed out at +1. On top of that, we've gone with skill haste just for those times when our talents aren't active, but it's certainly a defensible position to go with something different here, something more defensive focused. Quick options that come to mind are protection from elite if you're running against a bunch of elite or named enemies. And then obviously a little bit of armor on kill wouldn't hurt either, so you could certainly go that route as well. But again, for my money, I've gone with skill haste here just for those very infrequent times when your talents aren't already resetting your cooldowns. It's nice to get them back just that little bit faster. For a backpack, we have our second piece of hardwired gear here. That gets us our 2-piece bonus of plus 15% skill haste. And then we also, very crucially, have the short circuit talent that decreases feedback loop cooldown from 20 seconds to 10 seconds. So now all of the benefits that we talked about with the feedback loop talent can now happen twice as often, down from every 20 seconds to every 10 seconds. You can use one of your skills to reset the cooldown of the other. And again, just to emphasize it, all you have to do is use your skill. You don't even have to cancel it anymore. All you have to do is use one of your skills and it'll reset the cooldown of the other one. So all you have to do is literally drop the Restorer Hive next to you, and that will automatically reduce the cooldown of the Seeker Mines by 30 seconds, which, as you'll see later, is more than the entire cooldown time that they have. So now, once you include the amount of time it takes for the Seeker Mines to deploy and find an enemy, you only have to wait a few seconds in between cycles to drop your Hive, reset your Seeker Mines, and throw them again. For chest piece, we've gone with one piece of China Light Industries Corporation here to get us plus 15% explosives damage. For our attributes, we have skill damage, skill haste, and skill haste again in the mod slot here. Again, the skill haste is much more of a preferential pick here, so if you have a different secondary attribute that you want to go with, all that I strongly recommend is obviously stacking one attribute of skill damage on every single piece that you have here. Beyond that, it really is entirely up to you. Beyond that, we've gone with the Glass Cannon talent here. Glass Cannon is obviously a controversial talent. Not everyone enjoys running with it because it does make you much more fragile. But given that this build is designed around staying behind cover and using your skills to get your kills, I wanted to include Glass Cannon here because it gives you the highest overall boost to your skill damage. But it does obviously amplify the damage you take by 50%. So there are a number of different talents that you could go with if you don't like running on that knife edge. A few that come to mind would be Explosive Delivery for your Cluster Seeker Mines, Mad Bomber if you just want to take advantage of the explosive damage on this build, Tamper Proof if you want your Hive to have a little more offensive capability, or if you want a more team-focused build that also buffs your weapon damage, you could go with Overwatch, which would probably be my second option for this build. If you don't want to go with Glass Cannon, I would recommend going with Overwatch. After staying in cover for 10 seconds, you increase you and your allies' total weapon and skill damage by 12% as long as you remain in cover or are in a cover-to-cover move. So by the same principle as Glass Cannon, because this build is designed to be in cover for the majority of an encounter, you can increase both your and your teammates' weapon and skill damage by 12%. But obviously, as you can see, doing a quick comparison there, if you go with Overwatch, you are losing a bit of skill damage there, but the positive side of the trade-off is you are going to be less fragile than you are with Glass Cannon. As a quick note, I wanted to throw on the hardwired chest piece just to talk about the positive reinforcement talent, which increases the feedback loop, skill damage, and repair bonus from 10% to 25%. So the way to read that is this chest piece increases your skill damage and skill repair by an additional 15%. So obviously if you're going for the maximum amount of skill damage, that's why I went with Glass Cannon over positive reinforcement. But if you're not interested in going with Glass Cannon, you could go with the hardwired chest piece talent here, but I would actually still recommend Overwatch as my second choice, because even though you're dropping 3% skill damage, you are also gaining an additional 12% weapon damage for you and any allies that you're running with. With that out of the way, let's get into our gloves, where we've gone with the BTSU Datagloves Exotic. And we have gone with this piece solely for the Transference Overclock talent, which grants plus 15% Hive skill haste per skill tier. Detonating a Hive refreshes your skill cooldowns and grants overcharge for 15 seconds. And since we are at skill tier 6, this effect also applies to all of our allies, and allies receiving this effect are unable to benefit from it again for 120 seconds. But as you can see here, this is the primary reason we have the Restorer Hive also on this build. In addition to the hardwired feedback loop talent, this is another way to automatically reset your skill cooldowns, particularly your Cluster Seeker Mines. And what this is really great for is situational use. In group play, you're going to be paying attention to what your allies are doing, and if they need a moment of overcharge, you can use the Transference Overclock skill to destroy your hive, give them 15 seconds of overcharge for whatever skills they're using, and help you get out of a tight spot. If you're running it more solo, the Transference Overclock talent is going to be great for those few times that the feedback loop talent isn't available fast enough. Because as you'll see later in the video, or if you're doing quick math in your head, you can use feedback loop once every 10 seconds, but even when you factor in the amount of time it takes for the Seeker Mines to get from you to the enemy, there still will be a few seconds of lag between when you deploy your Seeker Mines and when you can use the feedback loop talent with your hive. So if you have a lot of enemies rushing towards you, or if you're just starting to get overwhelmed and you need to give yourself both a boost with the overcharge and also immediately get your Cluster Seeker Mines back after throwing them, you can throw your Cluster Seeker Mines, deploy your hive, immediately destroy it, and then that'll proc the Transference Overclock talent, again giving you overcharge and giving you time to get out of whatever situation you've gotten yourself into. For our holster, we have our third piece of hardwired gear, giving us our 3-piece bonuses of plus 15% skill damage and plus 30% repair skills. And again, this is the secondary reason why we've gone with the Restorer Hive as opposed to a different variation on the hive. Because of the repair skills that we're getting from the gear set and from the gloves, we actually have a decent amount of repair skills to use. So if you're running this one in a group, you can use that Restorer Hive situationally to increase your allies' armor. And on top of that, you can continue to spam Cluster Seeker Mines to your heart's content. And then with our Kneepads, we unlock our 4-piece bonus of the feedback loop talent. We've already gone over what it can do, but I just want to reiterate one more time. Because of the short circuit backpack talent, feedback loop can now occur once every 10 seconds. And again, as you'll see later in the video, and as I've said before, functionally it is even lower than that. Once you get into the right rhythm, you can essentially just throw your Cluster Seeker Mines, drop your hive to reset the cooldown, and throw your Cluster Seeker Mines again. I will be the first one to admit there are ways to get higher amounts of explosive and skill damage on a build with Cluster Seeker Mines, but if you are just looking for a build that is really easy to put together and a lot of fun to run, just spamming those Cluster Seeker Mines, this is absolutely the way to go. Real quickly, we want to run through our skills. We have our Restorer Hive and our Cluster Seeker Mines here that we've talked about oh so much. Both of these are at skill tier 6, giving us a fantastic amount of healing with our Restorer Hive and a wonderful amount of damage with our Cluster Seeker Mines. I'll go ahead and focus on the Cluster Seeker Mines here because these are the primary component of the build. As you can see there, our cooldown is less than 30 seconds, so even if we were to deploy them immediately, the total effect of the feedback loop talent would automatically reset them once it is procced. And that is another reason to at least partially invest in skill haste attributes and mods on this build, because without any investment, the Cluster Seeker Mine cooldown sits at around 45 seconds, which would mean that even with the feedback loop talent, you would still be looking at around a 15-second cooldown. But with at least a partial investment in skill haste, the feedback loop talent feels that much more powerful, immediately erasing all of your remaining cooldown and giving your Cluster Seeker Mines back to you instantaneously after dropping your hive. On top of that, between the skill damage and the Childline Industries bonuses, we're getting nearly 2.7 million damage from each mine here. We have 10 of those to go around. And as I've hinted about before here, this build is a lot more about quantity over quality. Even if all 10 of those mines don't hit an enemy, what they do force the enemy to do is dodge out of the way constantly, which gives your other allies time to focus on them and take them down. And then on top of that, when these mines do hit their target, they do an awesome amount of damage, giving you a surprising number of kills for how little effort you have to put into putting this build together. So with that all said, put this one together, take it for a spin, and let us know what you think of it in the comments below. As always, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and tell your friends about the channel so you can continue to help us grow and make videos like this. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.
control point detected.